Sing. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start now, so thank you all for attending. This is a special meeting that has been called because we had extra items to go on the agenda. As such, we won't be going over minutes or anything. I'll start off by asking you all to introduce yourself, please, for the purpose of those observing during live streaming. So I'll start with myself. I'm Penny Jones, and I'm Chair of Children and Young People Select Committee.
Good morning, I'm Peter Farley. I'm the County Councillor for Chepstow St Mary's and the Vice Chair of this committee.
Hazel Eilert, Scrutiny Manager.
Nicola Perry, Democratic Services Officer.
Sue Hall, Senior Officer Liaise.
Debbie Morgan, Access Unit.
Sharon Randall-Smith, Head of Service.
Stephanie Hawkins, Principal Officer ALN.
Good morning, Sarah McGuinness, Chief Officer, Children and Young People.
Keith Plough, Community Councillor for Mega Withundy and Governor of Mega Primary.
Hi, Debbie Blakeborough, Local County Councillor for the Trellick United area.
Maureen Powell, County Councillor for Castle Ward and Abergavenny, member of the committee.
Good morning, David Jones, member for the Criconi Ward in the north of Monmouthshire.
Good morning, Linda Guppy, member of this Children and Young People Select and a local member for Roggett, South Monmouthshire.
Peter Clark, member for Langibby Bower.
Good morning, Simon Nisi from 21st Century Schools.
Poppy Harris from 21st Century Schools team.
Nikki Wellington, Finance Manager for Children and Young People.
Well, thank you all. Apologies for absence. Are there any, please?
We received apologies from Councillor Harris, Councillor Liz Hackett-Payne and Councillor Fox.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Shall we go as and when? As and when? Thank you. Yes?
Chair, so,
yes.
On agenda item number 3, a Welsh Medium Strategic Plan, declare personal interest as children in Welsh Medium education, but it's not specific to the school, so it's not prejudicial. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, well, the first item on the agenda is item number 3, which is scrutiny of Welsh Education Strategic Plan. The purpose of this report, which you will see on page 4 of the bundle, if you have it in paper, is to provide scrutiny with an update on progress made in relation to Monmouthshire's Welsh in Education Strategic Plan, otherwise known as WESP, 2014-2015. This report provides scrutiny with an update, as we said, on the progress, and the key issues can be seen on page 4. It is a 3-year plan, and it's about Monmouthshire's aspect. There is, I think I must say at this stage, some concern about the report itself in that it was quite long, quite hard to read, and there were some issues with the data. However, this will be addressed, I'm sure, as we go along. All right, so I'm now going to hand over to Sharon Randall-Smith, who's going to talk us through it. Thank you.
We've presented an update of the WESP, the Welsh Education Strategic Plan, to scrutiny today in order to enable you to be able to look at and monitor the performance of the Directorate in relation to this particular plan, to ensure that the actions that we've taken are appropriate and timely, and that they are on target. The plan itself is a regional plan. It is a plan that we put together with our partners across Suk, and therefore a lot of the plan is drawn together from the Welsh medium section within the EAS, and a lot of the data that you see and the formatting is as part of that regional plan. The plan is long and at times quite complicated, and sometimes the formatting doesn't quite work, and we accept that, and it's something that we will work with the EAS in order to make that easier. And in the future, if it is more appropriate for you to have just the Monmouthshire section to scrutinise that, we'll arrange that for you, but we'll take the lead from you today. As part of the scrutiny of this plan, it also forms part of the scrutiny for the EAS and the role that that particular department within the Education Achievement Service is performing in relation to our schools. Obviously, you've had an opportunity to look at the plan. There are several officers here. We all contribute to it within Monmouthshire, from school performance side, from 21st century schools side, and then certainly from early years. And we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Councillor Breakborough.
Thanks. Welsh language, it's always a political hot potato, this really. The idea of this is to meet Welsh Government targets in terms of increasing the number of Welsh speakers. I guess just asking an open question, what would happen if we didn't, as an authority, meet the objectives set by Welsh Government? What financial support are we getting from Welsh Government to do this? What's the impact on school budgets? And what's the impact on school staffing as a result of carrying out this strategy?
Because developing and increasing the level of Welsh language and the access to Welsh education is a government priority, you know, obviously as a local authority we would be striving to meet those recommendations and that guideline as best as possible. Additional funding, we aren't accessing any particular additional funding other than through the funding that comes into the EAS for them to develop this work collectively with schools. And similarly, schools themselves access a Welsh education grant. As they have a PDG grant and a SEG grant, they also have a Welsh grant. As part of the work from the EAS and through their Welsh group, they are developing not just first language provision but second language provision. So they are offering training for teachers in order to build up their skills and capacity. They're working with schools in order to build up you know, the schemes of work and the way in which they deliver the curriculum. They provide an intensive level of support to schools, some more than others. For example, at the moment we have 16 of our primary schools that are having intensive support from that particular team to develop skills. Similarly, they organise meetings and curriculum development opportunities for secondary schools for second language, and they obviously support our pupils when they are in schools outside of Monmouthshire but are still accessing education through the medium of Welsh. So in many ways they support schools and pupils in the same way as the AS do in our English-speaking schools, but through the medium of Welsh in their specialist area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Chairman. Two things. One is, it says here to increase the number of children being taught through the medium of Welsh, but you were saying that there was being help to the schools for just teaching Welsh within the English-speaking schools. So what are we really looking at to increase? The teaching of Welsh within all schools, or encouraging more people to go to Welsh medium schools? Because I do feel that with equalities that people should have that choice whether their child is taught through the medium of Welsh, but I'm all for Welsh being taught in the main curriculum.
You're absolutely right, and thank you for that. The purpose of the plan is to facilitate both, because whilst, you know, obviously we are looking at standards of second language within our schools, because the majority of our schools in Monmouthshire are English language as a first language, we are also looking to and striving to increase access to Welsh medium education so that there is that choice for parents. We know that at certain points we have an increasing demand for education, and certainly with the number of pupils that we have within the authority at the moment moving into secondary provision, there is obviously a demand at that area, and there's a lot of work going on to secure places, not just at the, you know, within the primary phase, but also going through to secondary, not in the near future, but sustainably for the, you know, the foreseeable. Possibly my colleague here would be able to give you a little bit more information on that area of work. because I know that you've been doing some work in that area.
Yeah, we've recently sent out a Welsh medium questionnaire to assess the demand in the area at primary level, but also we're looking at establishing more early years settings as well through the Welsh medium. So that's another thing that we are looking at as part of the plan.
Can I just ask back, is the Welsh Government, are they going to provide extra funding if we need to build more schools so that it covers the area better, are we having to struggle with that within our education plan?
I'll answer that one for you. With regards to capital funding for schools, whether they're brand new Welsh medium schools, primary or secondary, will come through the 21st Century Schools, so they're dealt with in the same way as English schools regarding funding. As part of any bid that you put to Welsh Government, you've got to have a good case, and that's what the WESP does. It starts to build the robustness of that application for capital. So through the WESP, we are monitoring what the requirement through Welsh medium would be through Band B, which is Band B's in 2018 to 23, and that will form part of the Strategic Education Review and our bid going forward.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. Just to really clarify that the WESP isn't something that we put together in order to encourage children or young people to attend Welsh medium schools. It's a requirement. We are required as an authority, as is every authority, to develop a WESP. And I also ought to point out that there is also an ESTIN requirement for us to demonstrate as an authority how we are providing for currently and how we intend to provide for demand in the Welsh medium sector, and there is an increasing demand in Monmouthshire. So the WESP isn't there to encourage, it is an actual legislative requirement.
Thank you for pointing that out. Councillor Breakborough, you are next.
Yeah, just coming back to the programme. So if there was a demand, I'd like... Right, one of the questions is, what does a demand look like? So when you're sending out a questionnaire within Monmouthshire, what percentage of return do we need in order to know there is a demand for another school? If there is another school, does it mean it's a 50-50 split? Again, 50% money from Welsh Government, and then the local authority has to find 50% to capital money to pay for that. You were saying there's an increased demand in Monmouthshire. I'd like to know some figures around that.
As far as the questionnaire is concerned, the closing date was the 13th of March, so we haven't analysed the results. I'll tell you from early indications that we sent out 2,500 questionnaires and we've had 180 back. So the response rate is very low. What we're looking to do is to perhaps go out to early years settings, play groups, mother and toddler groups with questionnaires to try and encourage parents to complete them. But yeah, it is a low response rate, but we are going to do a full report on the results to obviously look at that demand in more detail.
Yes, because it's one of my concerns about the Welsh nurseries and the demand for them across Monmouthshire specifically. So there's a strategic review going on. But, you know, the requirements, they've got to be known. I mean, 100, how many, did you, 150 replies or something? 180 is not going to be enough, is it? You know, to commit money and finances to something that may not be needed or required. So we'll be interested in that report, and yes, could it come back to scrutiny as quickly as possible?
The other things as
Thank
well
you.
is obviously we have breached 2-year groups in Ysgolefeni in the north of the county. For the past 2 years we've had to go over the admission number, so it is indicating that it is increased demand in that area. I think it was 7 the 1 year and 2 the next year. So.
Go on, Debbie, you asked other questions.
Although you're saying that the Welsh Government has given us grants and money, if we did need to build a new school under the 21st century kind of programme scheme, we would have to find 50% of that funding from the local authority's capital budget?
Okay, well, I'll answer that. The way we've been working is in a consortium basis. So in the South East Consortium, there's about 5 councils working together. The realisation is that each county can't have one secondary school because the active investment's 30-40 million pounds. What we're looking at is holistically how that's best served within the area. So currently, when we've been looking at in Band A, what that looks like, there's approximately 3,000, just over 3,000 secondary places required for Welsh education. At the moment, that's being provided by YGG. Caerphilly have got a secondary school, and then the gap is very much perceived being in Newport, where they've got approximately 600 pupils that will need that education going forward. Our part of that is quite small in real terms, but we've got a requirement to provide those places. So in the Dufferin scheme, which form part of Band A work for us, it's about us supporting to ensure we've got the places within the school itself. But our job isn't to pay for a brand new school for Newport. What we are doing is contributing an element of money to secure those places for our students going forward. The Dufferin scheme is about 18-19 million pounds. We're putting about £1 million towards that. 500,000 would be ours. 500,000 would be Welsh Government's. There's a 50-50 match on that side of things. We don't want to get in the position where we're building schools for other authorities. The second part, Band B, where again through looking at how the Welsh language is growing in Monmouthshire, there may well need for us to make a larger contribution to a facility again, which will be consortium based, and that may happen in the northern area. We don't know yet until we've seen the figures. Whether that's for 50% funding, we do not know at the moment. The Welsh Government have realised that Band B, that local authorities won't have 50%. Because they've more or less spent it through Band A, they'll look at different ways of funding it. The good thing about the Welsh medium element is it is a consortium-led, so there will be contributions from all. What would be the most interesting part of it will be then the management and maintaining of that building going forward. I think that's the biggest challenge we'd have to ensure that we get best value out of the process.
Thank you. David, sorry, County Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Seem to indicate that going down to page 5, that 6.3% would be a reduction. Can we have some idea as to what 6.3% means numerically, and would it be an increase to that or a decrease to that?
I can certainly go and check that figure for you.
Okay, right.
Okay, I get that. We'll get back to you on that one. I can
think I read somewhere that there was an increase from 6 point something to 6.3, and as it's a vision, should we be setting our sights higher as it's a vision?
It's on page 2, isn't it? Yeah.
Page 2 is where my question starts from. Yes.
Of the bundle, so it's and section 1, vision and aim for Welsh in education.
That's right. Yes.
It's the bottom
bullet point. Yeah, and page 5 refers to has a table on it. I've lost it altogether.
Page 7 of the bundle, page 2 of the report.
All right. Right.
Sorry, what's the reply? What
Get the answer.
Said? Thanks.
I confirm that we'll get back to you, because if it's an increase, certainly I can see what you're saying now. So we'll need to confirm that with the EAS, who have looked at these proportions and things for us. Yeah. So I'll confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, Councillor Foley, and then you, Mr. Plant. Is that all right? Thank you.
Thank you. There are one or two aspects of this that I find, I was going to say puzzling, I actually find them troubling. This is a strategic plan 2014 to 2017, but today is the 26th of March 2015, and as far as I'm aware, we have not seen this document or a precursor, and I find that troubling, because it would have been possible, I don't say that it would have happened, for this committee to have had some quite different views about some of the things in here, or to have asked some of these questions at an earlier stage. So I'd really quite like to know why it hasn't come to us before now. If anybody can tell me.
The initial plan was presented to Council February 2014, and that was the process that all of the regional groups took in order for the plan to be shared widely.
Thank you. That's helpful. And secondly, and in my usual nitpicky way, I'd like to ask about the kind of quality control over the document. According to the document, we are Monmouthshire County Borough Council at the top of page 2. And unless there's been a rapid local government reorganisation, that isn't right, is it? So it really is a question of how thoroughly do we proof these things, particularly if we don't write them ourselves before they come to our committees. And this is an ongoing concern. I'm just using this paper as an example of a general issue.
I think that your point, Councillor Farley, is absolutely accepted. That's actually unforgivable that that's in there now. And quality control is something that we really need to be very clear about, particularly, as you say, when documents are coming to us from a third party. So I can only apologise for that at this point. I clearly haven't proofed that myself, and I'm happy to take the responsibility for it, but I'm also happy to rectify and make sure that that absolutely doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Mr Plough, followed by Councillor Clark, and then back to you.
Two things, really. I keep hearing the statement there's a greater demand for Welsh. Well, certainly, with my background and speaking to lots of parents in the locality of Mega with Undy, that doesn't seem to be the case. And I would question the way this questionnaire is managed. I mean, I'd prefer it to be done by a totally independent authority who has, nothing to gain. Because we've had an incidence of a couple of questionnaires being done in our area, and the response generally is very much like the one you say, about 180 out of about 2,500. And that tells me, either it isn't being presented properly, or really people don't understand what it's about, and people get so many boxes to tick nowadays, sometimes they tick boxes without realising, like the latest Premier delivery service from Amazon. But my second question is about page 53, resource implications, where, we're going to save 120k, but there's not going to be any reduction in services. I'd like a little bit more detail behind why there isn't going to be a reduction in services, and yet we're saving 120,000. Does that mean we were totally inefficient before this thing got underway?
Thank you, Mr Plough. I'll take the first part of your question and ask colleagues to come in on the second part in terms of resource implications. I also question the way the questionnaires have been managed historically, and I've had those conversations with officers currently. One example of poor quality questionnaire, for example, is that as it stands currently, this authority has questioned families whose children have been born in Monmouthshire. Now, with the influx of population, albeit not enormous, but there is an influx of population into Monmouthshire, as we know from outside, not just the county, but the country, we do need to reconsider how how questionnaires are managed, because there is highly likely to be a demand, not just in Welsh medium education, but for other aspects of education, other aspects of society, from families whose children have not been born here. So that's something that we are already looking at. I would say that the authority has nothing to gain from results from questionnaires. We have we need data. We need the data in order to demonstrate that we are effectively planning for the future, that we're seeing round corners as far as we possibly can. We do know that Monmouthshire, along with Cardiff, they are the two counties in Wales with the greatest increase in Welsh speaking of Welsh speakers. Therefore, that also is an indicator for us that there is likely to be a growing demand. We are not, we don't have the data in front of us to say what age those Welsh speakers are, but we do know that the greatest increase has been in Cardiff and in Monmouthshire. So we need to be clear about that. But I take on board your point around questionnaires, and that's something we're already looking at. I've had a conversation with Deb Morgan already about that, and it's a flaw, and that's something not just Monmouthshire would need to address, I would imagine. On the second part of your question around resource implications, if I could hand over to one of my colleagues.
Can I just intervene? I think that the resources, the finance question may relate to the next issue. Okay, so should we leave that till afterwards? Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a bit intrigued by Simon's response a few moments ago that we may well be investing in a secondary school in Newport. And I work it out that we're going to contribute 6.5% of the total capital cost. Can we be assured how we as a council are to be protected going forward, that our capital investment in another area is going to be protected?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Clark. We can be assured our investment is in order to secure lifetime places for our children and our young people in secondary education. There is currently a demand for increased secondary education. Ysgol Gyfun Gwynllyw in Pontypool reaches the end of its term, if you like, in 2017. By which time we need to be able to demonstrate that we can offer adequate transition to secondary Welsh education for our young people. That will be a lifetime guarantee. So we will be in a situation where our current two primary provisions have secondary transition opportunities to either the Dyffryn site or Ysgol Gyfun Gwynllyw going forward. So our capital investment is secured in that sense.
In lifetime, you mean perpetuity, do you?
I do, yes.
Councillor Jones, sorry.
Just a plea for the standard of Welsh to be consistently good throughout the report, really, because adding an S to something in Welsh doesn't necessarily make it a plural. Thank you.
There speaks a professional.
It would reflect badly on the county if it was
Exactly.
seen to be wrong outside the county.
I think overall that reflects on the quality of the report overall, doesn't it? And it's an issue that will be addressed, I know. Councillor Blakeborough.
Just to kind of confirm, so we're doing research to find out what the demand will be in the near future, and based on those numbers of pupils, we will put money towards the capital funding of the Welsh Medium School. Is that right?
Just to clarify, is your question around the secondary school? Yes. We're already committed to the secondary school and have been for years before my time here. This is something that Monmouthshire had to address quite some time ago, so I would simply suggest that there'd be historical minutes of that sort of thing. The commitment to secondary transition has been in place for quite some time. The transition figures were based on the fact that it was very clear, it has been clear for years now, that the increase in primary provision would result in a need for secondary provision. The secondary school that historically Monmouthshire children moved to at Key Stage 3 was clearly not going to have the capacity for all of those children come 2017. Therefore, we have known as a county for years, longer than the last 18 months, that need would be there, and therefore that commitment was made some time ago.
Right, are there any more questions? Then I think really to sum up, we have an understanding of the statutory requirements by Welsh Government and Estyn of all the 5 local authorities. However, I think we must make it understood that this committee would need to know the exact demand prior to any decisions being made in the future and for effective planning to be carried out. At the moment, it doesn't seem to be very clear. And the recommendations really make it, the quality of the report is slightly ambiguous, I'd say. You know, faults with perhaps it hasn't been edited as well. And that in future perhaps we could have the report that actually addresses the Monmouthshire issues only, the 3 pages, because I think that will make it easier for all of us to understand. And that the questionnaires, perhaps it is a good idea to go forward actually into the schools as opposed to questionnaires. It could be indicative, of course, that people aren't interested enough to fill in the questionnaires. So that in itself may be a precursor. But however, if you go actually into the areas, then we will get to know exactly the demand, hopefully. All right, thank you very much for the officers there, and thank you for attending. We'll go on to the next item. Do you want to leave now? Yeah, okay, we'll give you a quick. The next item on the agenda is item 4, and it's the ALN update, stage 2 proposal. And for those who are observing on live stream, and for those who may not have been here before, must emphasise that this is a continuation of the stage 1 proposal that we had in detail at a previous meeting. So it is an update, and the purpose of this report is to advise members of the proposed strategy for the transformation of ALN service provision across the authority. As I say, this follows on for stage 1. And I'll hand over to Stephanie Hawkins, Principal of ALN, Principal Officer of ALN, and she'll hopefully explain. And I know that people would like to know about the diagram in particular and perhaps add some detail to it. Okay, Stephanie, thank you.
Thank you. As you'll be aware, the ALN strategy, policy and procedure is undergoing 3 stages. This is actually stage 2. Stage 1 was the document which you received beforehand, which dealt with how schools effectively identify and support children with special educational needs. You'll be aware of the matrix. You will be aware that our strategy and policy needed to be improved because it was something that was identified by Estin as being weak. So looking at, if we could look first of all at the regional structure, we've worked very closely with our schools through their special educational needs coordinators and through the South East Wales Consortium to go forward in how schools effectively use their resources and work together to improve identification and support for children. Now, we already have, as you can see in the north and in the south, clusters of effective SEN coordinators, assistance heads, and of schools themselves, looking at how they can use their resources effectively. The new thing for us here is if you look at the centre of the diagram, EPS, Educational Psychology Service, you will be aware that this is a statutory requirement in through our regulations from the SEN Code of Practice. I'm sure you all understand that. The time allocation is actually how we divide the time for all schools, for pupils. We divide it in 3 ways. We would look at what we call direct time, which is time working with children with schools. We would look at cluster time, which is how schools work together to build their capacity and respond to supporting children with special educational needs. And lastly, the statutory function, which is to look at how psychology supports the local authority in moving forward in our aim to meet children's needs. You can see to the, it's to the right, to the left probably if you're looking at it, you can see the yellow services are the non-statutory services, and these are the services that we put in as an authority in order to build schools' capacity, because essentially the children are within the school. They are not within County Hall. So we have to make sure that schools have the tools, necessary tools to do the job. And if I could just go through those boxes with you. Outreach. Outreach is a specific support run by teachers for teachers. They do not observe children directly and give reports. They would observe and support teaching to make sure that children are able to access the curriculum. So the outreach base is currently at Overmono. Overmono has a special needs resource base. Their specialisms are PMLD, profound and multiple learning difficulties, and ASD, autistic spectrum disorder. Now that outreach facility visits all schools. We will wish in the future to extend that to Key Stage 3 and 4, because you'll be aware of Mono is foundation phase and Key Stage 2, but that will be part of our 21st century work. COMET, HI and VI. HI is the hearing impaired service, VI is the visually impaired service, and COMET is the social use of language programme. Now, those three areas we commissioned jointly with South East Wales Consortium, and that is the most effective use the 5 authorities feel of our funding. Specific learning difficulties, you may know this as dyslexia. It is something that affects children who have difficulty accessing the written word. And we have advisory teachers who go into our schools and support with that. And training, which is training for all schools, for all teachers, for all TAs, for all of our early years settings. It's based on pupil need and outcomes of quality assurance cycles and data analysis. So I think it would have been reasonable to say in the past that training was led by how we felt the authority needed to go forward. Now, with our more smart and effective use of pupil data, we use that to ensure that not only does the school ask for training, but we challenge the schools to make sure that they have the training that they need. You can see the pink areas, the south, which if I look at the south just as an example, Chepstow and Caldecott comprehensive schools, you will be aware that Caldecott School has a special needs resource base for over 70 pupils who are SLD, severe learning difficulties and autistic spectrum disorder. And Chepstow School has a special class which is run within school for children with severe learning difficulties. So if you look at those two comprehensive schools working together and look at the resources they have there, they will work with the primary clusters. And there is Pembroke School has a special needs resource base for children with severe learning difficulties and physical mobility to support how all of the schools ask for additional help, how the referrals and the consultations are managed, and that will be worked in such a way that it's more open, it's more transparent, and the schools will monitor the referrals with the authority rather than the authority receiving and deciding how the support is given. Did that help?
Yes, that was very clear. I've written lots of notes all over it, so I feel that does help. Councillor Guppy.
Yes, it sort of brings in how does the pupil referral service fit into this structure in means of direct, if the pupils need to go there, but actually the supports and preventative work, and I can't see it clear within the system how it's brought into the structure.
Thank you for your question. The pupil referral service isn't involved in this particular structure because we have our inclusion service that deals with the pupil referral service and the ALN service that is dealing with this aspect of the work. So we wouldn't have included it in the regional structure as within this part of our development.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor Guppy?
It's just that sometimes these they go hand in hand, and I'm not quite sure that this is transparent enough in view of how pupils that are being referred or getting support from the pupil referral service, if they got additional needs, then it should be incorporated with this in the system.
Could I take that? Thank you. You're absolutely right that it would be reasonable to say that a lot of children who are referred to the pupil referral service do have additional learning needs. We work very closely through the inclusion service, through their panel, which the pupil referral service has and which is required by Welsh Government. It is a separate entity now, the pupil referral service, whereas 20 years ago it would have worked for additional learning needs, but now you'll be aware that it has its own management committee, and that has been set up by regulation from Welsh Government. So we as a distinct group sit on that panel so that we do play a full and active part in ensuring that support is there when our children need it. But it would not be part of this because it does come under a management structure which is regulated by Welsh Government.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brakeburn, followed by Councillor Farley.
Under this scheme, it looks as if the scheme has devolved additional learning need funding and responsibility and workload to schools. And also the statutory and the non-statutory support is given to the consortium on a regional level. And I guess I'm just sort of seeing a split. So what do you think is the future role of local authority in this scheme and in this setup?
To clarify, the statutory responsibility remains with the authority. So we will always be responsible for the direction of a child's education, who it is determined the authority will do that. So I am very aware that with the new statutory reform, which you all know is coming, we may not have the statutory process anymore. Now, the statutory process is colloquially called statementing, but the statutory process does not necessarily have to result in a statement, and we are very aware that the new statutory reform will in fact take that element away, and that children will then have individual development plans which Welsh Government require to be run out in schools. The move toward by Welsh Government is very much that the local authority remains to support the statutory element, but that additional learning needs is actually worked in school. Now, you'll be aware from stage 1, our strategy, policy and procedure, that the School Action Plus Resource Assist package, which used to be called the funding panel, remember everything used to come into us, we would assess it and then decide. Now, the School Action Plus Resource Assist panel is held in schools. We have to understand that's where the children are, that's where the greatest body of knowledge is, and that's where the work goes on. Now, we are all part of that package. School Action Plus Resource Assist is quite a revolution in its own quiet way, that for the first time, children without the resort to the statutory process will be able to have a contract written for them within the school, which includes the school, which includes the parent, and which includes the local authority. I mean, if you bear in mind the statutory process does not include the school. The school does not sign a statement. The authority signs a statement. So you're absolutely right in what you're saying, County Councillor Blakeborough. The move from Welsh Government and from all authorities is to ensure that where the children are is where the support is and where the structure is.
So just to follow on a question from that. So if you've got, there's regional responsibility and action, if you like, local responsibility and action in terms of directly in the schools. So with the local authority, the role will be changing, and you're saying it's more that we have the responsibility to make sure things, the targets are being met and things are happening. Will it have an effect on the local authority team? Because you did have quite a large team. With the responsibilities changing, will we be seeing staff losses within that team or movement?
Well, I think it is reasonable to say that we are actually quite a small team now. I do appreciate that when I came to post 2 years ago, that we had additional psychologists, we had a specialist psychologist. I replaced a principal psychologist. We no longer hold the post of principal psychologist, and we have been able to reduce the amount of support that the SEN team needs for clerical response because we don't have the number of statutory response. The statutory response is hugely time consuming in paperwork. So looking at the SEN team, which is the team that rolls this out for you, I'm the officer for additional learning needs, so I cover psychology, advisory teacher through specific learning difficulties and SEN. But looking at the SEN team that does the structural work, we now have one senior SEN support officer, one SEN support officer, and a part-time clerical support officer. So I do not think it would be reasonable to reduce that any further at this time.
Thank you. That was very clear.
Councillor Farley.
Thank you. I think you've mentioned the, if I could call them the special resource bases, the units. I'm thinking of, for a couple of examples, Pembroke Primary and Derry View. There may be others. There's little mention of them in fact, there's no mention of them in the paper or in the diagram, and I'm interested to see how they kind of fit, including whether there's any implications in the individual school budgets that are set out on page 56, but I might want another question about that. So first question, where are those special units in this?
Our special units, the special needs resource bases, and any specialist facility we have would be included in stage 3. This is looking at building the capacity of schools. If you look at this as a 3-tier cake, that's the best way I can describe it. First of all, we had to look at how schools can ensure that there is transparency and equality for all of our pupils, and that was the strategy, policy and procedure. So we gave the schools the tools to do the job. Now looking at how they will manage those tools is stage 2, and looking at working together in the way Welsh Government require them now to do. Looking at the Donaldson report, it's very much focused in this way. And thirdly, we will be looking at all of our specialist resource bases in stage 3. But you can see that outreach there is a very small part of that, but that is actually the part that impacts on mainstream schools.
Right.
Thank you. Can I come back to the...
Please.
So just for the sake of people perhaps watching who may not have access to the paper, can you just very briefly give me an idea why, for example, some primary schools the cost is 3,000 and some less than that, some down to 1,000? That's based on what exactly?
We worked with our finance officers, and it is based on free school meals and the number of pupils who attend the school. When we looked at how this would go forward, we looked at how other authorities who border our county and who we are involved, we have their pupils, they have our pupils. We looked at how other authorities had done that, and it's quite different. For example, in Gloucestershire, where we take quite a few pupils from Gloucestershire, you will be aware that pupils who are coming into Monmouth Comprehensive School now, if they hold an English statement of special educational needs, they will be charged now for the support of psychology. So a psychologist who will visit the school and who would then write a report on that, and who may or may not visit parents. We always visit parents, but they may not see the parents. The cost for that, for half a day for the school, is £650 from the Gloucester Psychology Service. For Newport, they have done something very different again, and they are charging an hourly rate. They have moved all of their advisory teachers and their psychologists to Maisebo Special School. Are you aware of Maisebo? It's a profound and multiple learning difficulties school based in the north of Newport, so the south, just by Tredegar House. So they have based all of their advisory teachers and psychologists there, and they're charging an hourly rate. Now, when we consulted, having just spoken about consultations, I have to say my questionnaire was a short one. It only had 2 questions, which I thought was fairly ALN enough. I've also had the opportunity to meet with all our head teachers through the cluster meetings, North and South, and also I was invited and attended the Monmouthshire Association of Primary School head teachers, and I've also attended the funding forum with us to discuss the way forward. Now, schools agree that the most reasonable way to pay this is through a service level agreement. In actual written responses, I'm afraid I've only had 3, 2 of whom were in agreement, and 1, they didn't have another suggestion, but they weren't quite sure what else to do. So looking at what we have here, we have based this on a system where we've looked at the schools, how many pupils they have, how many free school meals they have, and it was what the schools wanted. Could I just ask Nikki to comment as well? Nikki Welling.
Please.
Nikki, could you comment? You were at the meetings with me, please.
Yeah, the funding, quite rightly, as Steph has indicated, is based on the group of the school, an uplift for free school meals over a certain percentage. So it's done on bandings like that. Yes, we met with all the schools. The schools are aware of the service level agreement, and there was no significant concerns over that. I mean, obviously, I suppose the main concern for schools is the fact that their budgets are getting tighter and tighter, like every other authority's budgets. But no, they weren't astounded by the costs or anything, and felt that it was, fair value for money.
That's fine.
Thank you. That's helpful, and I do realise that perhaps I was being premature in asking about the school units, but this is going to require obviously careful management. Now, this is an SLA model into which the schools are locked. Is that right? They have no choice. Could they go elsewhere if they wanted to, as they might with other services from here that are covered by an SLA?
Yes, obviously that is the risk of producing an SLA. Schools have the freedom to purchase those goods or services from elsewhere. So yes, that is an issue. It is a 1-year SLA, finishing on the 31st of March 2016. I don't foresee, from the conversations that I've had, and obviously until we have the returns in, I don't foresee any issue with them buying into it, but it is the freedom that they do have. It might well be that as we move forward that we put it into a 3-year SLA, as we have done with our maternity cover, but that's something that Steph and I have got to discuss over the next few weeks.
And clearly, in the interests of the children and their families, and indeed of the schools, it's got to be sustainable. People need to know where they are, and from the point of view of the possible loss of a service, we must guard against the vulnerability that implies. But you've obviously taken all those things into account, at least thus far, and thank you.
Well, we have spoken to schools very carefully to decide how best to go forward. I think, as you're quite rightly saying, Nikki, that schools at the moment realise that other authorities are doing very much the same thing. And I know that Monmouthshire Association of Primary Head Teachers have asked me for as much detail as possible in the South East Wales area to look at how much a psychologist would cost for an hour. I don't have that level of detail at the moment available to me from South East Wales Consortium, only from Gloucestershire.
Thank you. If you're working together. Thank you. Councillor Powell.
Thank you very much, Chairman. If you went to your doctor and your doctor recommended that you take your child to a psychologist, that would be paid for under the National Health, wouldn't it?
I'm not quite sure.
Yes.
Yes.
So, it's... I know it's educational, but if the child... It's a health thing that causes the child to have a condition. So it seems a shame that we can't get some funding from the National Health.
Can I just point out the difference between psychology and psychiatry? I think this is very, very important, and this is something that really does worry parents. If we ask a parent for their child, for permission for their child to see a psychologist, they assume that we're talking about a psychiatrist. We're not. What an educational psychologist does do is look at how children learn and help us support in a different way of learning. It is not about understanding the clinical psychology of the child. So we need to make that very, very clear.
Yes, thank you for that, Stephanie, because I was going to say it's unlikely a doctor would refer to a psychologist, would refer more likely to a psychiatrist for different reasons.
Yes,
Sarah, you wanted to go. Sorry, Sarah, you wanted to.
Thank you, Chair. No, it was precisely that point, that it's very rare that health would refer to psychology. More often than not, it's through an educational route. Therefore, those cost implications do rest with education, not with health.
Sorry, can I clarify? Health do refer to psychologists, but they're not education psychologists. There are two distinct types of psychology.
Clinical psychology and
psychiatrists and psychologists, again, another service.
Councillor Blakeborough.
Just on page 53 of the bundle, looking at point 5, resource implications. 5.1, Groundhog Day, asking the same questions. The service level agreement will be paid from school budgets, and the remainder of the costs will be met by the local authority. And then this will realise the 120,000 in directorate savings, so local authority savings, in line with the mandate 35 as part of the budget. I'd like a little bit more information around that, some understanding. But when I'm reading this, I'm looking at the questions, what is the added pressure placed on the schools? Because it seems to me as if the schools picking up the bill, the local authority bill here, and that's why we can make this £120,000 savings. If you realise those savings, again, the question is, what is going? Is it staffing costs that we're saving on, or the 120,000? So those are the questions just around that area.
Thank you. And yes, it is very important. You can see there is a resource implication in this. We have to ensure that we work in an effective and in a transparent way in assessing children's educational needs. We know that our strategic planning around identification was weak. That was identified by Estin. So we have determined several strategies, and the one that we have spoken about is our plan to ensure that schools moderate their referrals and requests for consultation. Now, a criticism of the authority was that too many children were resorted to statutory assessment, which is a costly and time-consuming process, rather than working with families, with schools, to ensure that the funding went directly into schools as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And this is something that this cluster model will facilitate, that schools will work together, it will be more transparent, whereas in the past only the local authority would have seen the request for referral. So, for instance, the matrix supports this. What we have to ensure is that all schools have the same level of need and all pupils have the same level of need, and we can respond to that.
I'm going to ask the question again because you haven't answered my question. Yeah,
Oh,
I understand the principle, I understand
right.
the process behind it. My question is, as I'm reading that the service level agreement will be paid from school budget. So my question is that added pressure on the school budget? Am I correct in reading that in effect the school budget will be picking up the bill, hence local authority being able to make a savings of 120,000? And once again, just to make it easy for me to understand, with you making £120,000 savings, just give me some description of what is going, because something's going to a service or a member of staff or something is going to save 120,000. So what does that look like?
Can I just bring in, Stephanie, can I bring in Nikki here,
Yes,
please?
I think that would
Can
be
you
helpful.
turn off your microphone? Thank you. Nikki, would you like to come in on this? I think you did mention this before,
Yes,
in fact,
yeah.
earlier, but thank
Yeah.
you.
The 120,000 is a service level agreement which schools, we are not passporting the money out to schools to pay back in. That's so basically schools are having a pressure of 120,000. There's two things here that you need to know. Obviously, you've seen the schedule per school, so they know how much they're going to contribute. But the other thing is, it's a contribution to the non-statutory provision of the service. The local authority is still holding the statutory provision. The actual service costs a lot more than 120,000. It is a contribution to it. It is not covering the whole cost. There are no loss of staff. There's no savings. The savings for the authority is effective. As an authority, we're not saving anything. Schools are paying for essential service.
That's really helpful, because I think that has been our concern. When looking at the budget, we're saying, brilliant, ALN department is saving 120,000. Actually, what you're doing is you're putting the bill onto the schools to pay that 120,000. So I understand that now.
Sarah, would you like to come in here?
Yes, just briefly, and it's a really, really good point, but I think it's my role here to remind us all that as a local authority, as an education authority, we are here to enable our schools to be the best they can be. That means all our children. The purpose, fundamentally, of the work that's being done around this is to safeguard our children. Safeguarding doesn't just mean child protection, it means that we are safeguarding their futures. If our schools were, and they are perfectly at liberty to, look at resources to support them with ALN, with HR, with finance, with all sorts of things. No school has to come into an SLA with a local authority. However, our schools have seen that there is a strength in actually coming together in this particular sense. The cost to our schools is slightly enhanced, yes, but it's very slight. And the figures are there transparently for you to see. The understanding from all our schools is that we are safeguarding all our pupils by suggesting that this is the route that would be beneficial to our schools in Monmouthshire. Fundamentally, this is a journey which will protect our schools too and provide a safety net to them. I also need to point out that SLAs in relation to ALN and everything else have always come from school budgets, but we are now in a process of change, and this isn't just relating to ALN. So I really hope, Nikki's answer was very clear. I hope that really helps that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Are there any other questions? Yes, Mr. Plough.
Is there a variation in the service that Caldecott offer and Chepstow? Because I've come across a couple of situations where pupils have been transferred from Caldecott to Chepstow, and whether it's having a particular class environment is better than the environment they had in Caldecott. Could that be the reason this happened, Stephanie?
Both of the SNRB in Caldecott and the special class in Chepstow School have very different functions, and children's needs will change over time. A child's condition may deteriorate. They may need a greater level of support. So it is purely on the different type of need, not that one unit is better than the other.
That's great.
Okay. Well, I think we can wind this up now, and I'd just like to say thank you very much for the report, and Stephanie for attending, and fellow officers. I think the committee's reassured that in stage 2 the key issues are being addressed, especially that less Monmouthshire pupils are being educated outside the county or have to attend school outside the county, and also that this consistency of service is the aim and objective across the board. Which also ties in with the Welsh Government policy, of course, for delegation of funding and services to schools. So it seems to progress nicely. And we look forward to stage 3, which is a review of specialist education and provision for children and young people in Monmouthshire, to see how it also progresses. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, just to say, Mark unfortunately is on holiday, or not unfortunately, fortunately is on holiday today. I'm presenting the report. I will do my best to answer the questions where I can, but if there's very detailed questions, I might have to get back to members with some of the answers. So we're starting off on page 66 of the pack. The recommendations are outlined in section 2. The one area I would like to emphasise is the fact that members will be aware that at this time of year we quite often see a lot of slippage from one financial year into the next financial year for capital. Mark quite rightly is advocating a different way of looking at this slippage and trying to work with managers to identify slippage that is actually genuine slippage, work has been delayed and we need to move it across, and slippage that is actually because the work that's going on is not going to cost as much as originally the budget, or that there are other priorities and things have changed during the year. And effectively that paragraph in 2.2 explains that and provides the detail of those schemes that he will be looking at with managers. The other area, again, that I want to raise is the concern over the profile of spend. And again, it's highlighted in the report that in the first 9 months, we're planning to spend in the last 3 months about as much as we spent in the first 9 months. So again, it's by looking at the slippage and prioritising that, it's enabling projects to start earlier in the year and we don't see the rush in the last 3 months. 3.1.1, the table there details all the spend across the authority for capital, indicating that children and young people is £2,000 underspent, and you'll find a link at the bottom of the report that gives the detail of that children and young people's spend. There's further details again around the 771,000 for the slippage, and there's details of what that decommitted spend is likely to be spent on in 3.2.7, and again that's what I was saying in terms of different priorities as the year has moved forward. 3.4 then details the capital receipts and the financing that is required over the year and the changes in there. And 3.5 gives the usable, if I can get my words out, capital receipts over the medium-term financial plan window. Those were the main areas that I was going to provide any detail on, but obviously I'm happy to take any questions where necessary.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Nikki. Are there any questions? I just have one. It's on page 69. I'd just like to know how the underspend, it's 331. Have you got it? Outturn. How is the underspend in relation to the Sims development costs accounted for? Why is there an underspend?
The underspends occurred because the project has actually moved back slightly. Right. Okay, so again, that will catch up with itself. Okay, it's just where the timing of the spend has been.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else? Well, it was a very clear and concise report, as always. So thank you for bringing that to us, Nikki. And I think, you know, you've been let off very lightly. I can't see any more questions. So thank you very much for that. Sorry, my mic. Yes, both items are going to return, the ALN and also the Welsh in Education in Monmouthshire schools, hopefully in a different format. So we look forward to that. But that for today is all. So thank you all for attending. Meeting closed.